As I began to research this fear thing and how debilitating that is, it became more and more apparent to me that that's actually where most people live now. In America, 70% of young people between the ages of like 18 to 30 are saying that fear is like their number one problem.
Well, what an exciting thing. I just want to say, as we jump in here and start to digest this book, for me, it's a proud moment, even though I didn't write it. This has been a labor for you, but just living it with you over the last 5 years and the inspiration that's come behind it. And now we're going to dig in and talk about it. So really exciting.
It really is, Ryan, because it has been feels like a long journey to me, because it really started with COVID when I started thinking about some of these concepts. It's been 4+ almost 5 years of research and work, and you've been a part of every aspect of it as the executive pastor of the Road Church. And I mean, we're together at least 5 days a week, all the time. We've been doing that for 10 years. Yeah,
it's fun to see, like, just as the words have taken shape on the page, but just from practical principles, daily disciplines, and all of that, and just you modeling that in leadership at the Road for us and all the staff. So really excited that this is now moving into the community. Here's a picture of the book that is being released and is released now. And just so excited to get this out in the hands of folks and see how it's going to start transforming lives, because it's just so practical and very user-friendly. Yeah. So I was going to jump in. What is a habit? What does that mean to you as you would define it?
Great question. I think a habit is a routine. It's an action, something, you don't necessarily do it daily, but you consistently do something to the degree that it becomes automatic. So it's kind of like driving home. Sometimes when I drive home and I pull into the driveway, I don't remember the entire trip from wherever I was because it's so automatic. Yeah. And what's so great about habits is at first they're hard, but they get easier because they become so much a part of your routine and the actions that we start to have, as it were, the ability to not even have to think about something, but it's still forming our character. It's still forming our life. And so that's why habits are so important. But to be honest, Ryan, I didn't think that much about it. I'm a very disciplined person. So are you. Both of us were collegiate athletes. So we already know about discipline and the importance of discipline. So I knew about habits. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah, that's true.
By Stephen Covey was a big book in my life in the 70s. I began to understand through research that habits were so crucial in our lives in a more defined way.
Yeah, I love that, and bringing it down practically for people just to have those small bites at a time. But then even you do such a good job in this, and it's going to be fun to explore as we go on in the journey, but where you're tying biblical principles to the habits that can really resurrect, reform, and transform our daily lives. So we'll get into that. I want to jump back, going a little bit about maybe what was the inspiration, what kind of drove you, because we were talking a little bit about, even one day, I think we were sitting by the fire pit, and you go, man, I feel like God's putting this book on my heart. And it was the early inception and embryonic phases of Breakthrough Courage. But walk us through a little bit about maybe what was driving you in that season to create this.
Well, remember COVID. Remember how our church went through that? Yeah. And everybody did, all over the world, not just in America, but here in Colorado, being in a state where there were some mandates laid down for us, even as churches, to shut down. And so what we did, as you remember, because you were a part of everything, was we began to do research and studies and asking the question, is this really legit? Or is this some kind of a control thing by kind of the government or the medical industry? Well, we began to discover some things, right? But I think it wasn't that was the inspiration. It was more the fear. It was the fear I saw in people and the fear I saw in even Christians and even pastors. Yeah. They were so fearful. Right. As I began to research this fear thing and how debilitating that is, it became more and more apparent to me that that's actually where most people live now. In America, 70% of young people between the ages of like 18 to 30 are saying that fear is like their number one problem. And ideations with suicide, drug addiction, depression, anxiety, and even agoraphobias and panic are a big part of those 20-year-olds, even into the mid-30s. And I would like to think, these people should be kind of the most fired up about their life. They should be the most idealistic. They should be the most excited.
Yeah.
I mean, 18 to 25, 18 to 30.
That's right. I'm thinking about
man,
my time.
You get to my age, and I could see where some people start going, well, it's kind of, I'm a loser, Like, I really haven't done anything with my life. But I remember my 20s being very exciting, kind of thinking of the adventure,
Same.
what I was going to do and stuff. So that's pretty sad. And Harvard even had a study that I talk about in the book that shows that we are the most fearful nation since World War II. So
Wow.
this is the worst we've been since World War II.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine the comparison, because if you know anything about history,
Right.
you realize the whole world was worried and fearful that Hitler and the Russians were going to take over the world. And to think that we're at that same level now is pretty bad. So I just began to do research on it. I looked at it scientifically. I looked at what the studies were about fear that were out there, because I didn't want to pastor a church that was built on fear.
Right.
And so that was the genesis of the book.
Makes sense.
Was just looking at fear. I kind of started with fear. I didn't start with courage. I started with fear, and asking the question, why are so many people stymied by this and paralyzed by this emotionally, mentally, and even physically? So COVID stirred up the soup.
Yeah.
And kind of what was latently down on the bottom of culture kind of rose up. And I went, wow, I'm a pastor. I'm a leader. I'm a father to my congregation. I owe it to them and to myself and to my family to figure this thing out. So that was when the concept of how we walk by courage began to manifest itself. I like what Winston Churchill said, speaking of World War II, but Winston Churchill, the former prime minister of Great Britain, says, fear is a reaction.
Yeah.
Courage is a decision.
Love that. It's really...
So there you go. I mean, that to me was like, when I saw that was certainly a part of a paradigm shift in me.
Yeah, I mean, and it makes sense. And I love that, you were attacking it from, and the way I've thought about this is just that fear and courage are really two sides of the same coin. And you reference that here, that there is this intertwining, there's connectivity here. I think of fear, and we've talked about this, is fear is the economy of, Satan's kingdom, and courage is the equity of God's kingdom as he tries to inspire his creation in that. So how do we fight that? And then you even reference here, and we've heard how many times the Bible says, do not fear, do not be afraid, right?
144 times.
144 times. And then courage, I think, was like 114.
Exactly.
So there's something to that for our makeup, our design. Intuitively, God, our creator, knows that we need to be encouraged.
That's right.
And then even starting out the introduction here, and Joshua is going to be kind of a theme running through the book.
Yeah.
But his life, his narrative, and all the things he's called to do.
That's right.
And then the things that we face on the landscape. It's so interesting as you're talking about the demographic that's getting hammered right now in society. And I'm thinking about myself when I was that age, and the same thing. It's like life's in front of me, all the goals, all the desires, the dreams, and it's you're full of life. And
That's right.
you're not so much in the rear view mirror yet, checking out your wounds and like what you took your good licks on and where you learned from some big failures. Those are yet to come. But to see kind of things held hostage by this narrative of fear that just is permeating our culture. So
it's true.
Timing of your book, just to revitalize, bring breath, bring life, bring encouragement, into our community and influence.
So, Ryan, to support what you're saying and to give maybe anecdotal data to the idea of fear, I was meeting with the assistant to the mayor of Colorado Springs about 6 months ago. So the mayor had been elected. We had the debate of the two mayoral candidates here at our church. So I was meeting with his assistant because he used to be a pastor. And I asked him, I said, what do you think is the number one problem or the number one issue in Colorado Springs that needs to be addressed? And he said mental health.
Wow.
And then he said fear. So here we are in I would consider our city a very successful city. We're on the up and up. I mean, we are a city that is continually growing, one of the fastest growing cities of middle size in the United States. Number one destination, U.S. News and World Report last year. I think we were number one for people moving to a city. Yeah. And I think we're like number one or number two as the most healthy environment in the United States. So Colorado Springs is a up and coming, very cool place to move to. He said the biggest issue is mental health and fear.
Wow.
So that just shows you how pervasive this is.
Yeah.
And all that COVID did was sort of, like I said, kind of stir up the soup and show things kind of came to the top that I think all I can do is speak for me, I was unaware of.
Well, it caught us by surprise. I think a couple things jump out in the book initially. And then just to support what you were saying too, I had read a stat that supporting Colorado Springs as a city, I think we were in the top 5 of the educated. So I think we had per capita one of the top 5 cities in the country with people living here with PhDs. So not only are we an up-and-coming city, we're a highly educated per capita city, and yet fear is just looming over the background and narrative in people's hearts and minds. So very telling.
And another stat that a lot of people don't know is that we were the number, at least a few years ago, I don't know now, but we were the number one city for suicide among youth in the state of Colorado.
Absolutely. That's tragic.
Isn't that crazy?
It's
so here we are, everything
really.
We're saying, and talk about bringing it down to the young people, number one, with suicide ideation and suicide, actually successful, if you can call it that, successful suicides in our city.
Yeah.
And we seem to be a city where that shouldn't be true, but it is.
And what's interesting, I want to point out in the book, is that that stat leads 5 years prior to COVID. So for the last decade, right, this has been kind of coming in and permeating our society. But I think COVID gave us the microscopic lens. There was already a fracture happening in humanity, and COVID just deepened that and revealed more of that. People staying at home, the isolation, all the stats we've read, how unhealthy that was, the mental health continuing to decrease. So, yeah, all the more reason. Be obedient with what God was putting on your heart and developing these 9 habits to live from. So good. I was going to jump in. I want to read a quote here, and we're going to moving back into this concept of habits. Habits harness time and energy. Time is the currency of purpose. This means that our purpose and destiny are largely determined by the habits we develop. So powerful. And really just stopping and pausing on that, and even just introflexion to say, let me take inventory of my own life. Where are habits that need to be either strengthened and develop more? What are habits that need to be stopped? And what are habits that I need to start entirely, right? So thinking through that lens as we go through this.
Well, everybody's got the same amount of time. And not everybody has the same amount of energy, but purpose is reflected more by how you use your time than you even know. So many people have a purpose, they say, to be a success at some field. I see this a lot with musicians. We have a lot of musicians in this church, and they're young people, and they want to be worship leaders, let's say. But then they don't practice, okay? Right. So they don't actually put in the time to be a worship leader of a congregation, which is, they say that's their purpose. That's not their purpose. You don't ask people what their purpose is. You look at their life and the way they live their lives, that's their purpose.
Yeah, amen.
So if a person says that I'm not sure about my purpose right now, I'm kind of in flux, that's such a good answer, right? And if I was talking to them or counseling them as a young person, I would say, well, probably going to be important for you to at some point define that. And then you've got to begin to develop habits that get you towards your purpose.
So true.
Because that's what a habit is. It harnesses time and energy, and then it begins, not all at once, but it gradually begins to define your purpose. It begins to move you in that direction incrementally.
Yeah.
So that's why I like to say, when I said this in the book, in the introduction, I said, look, it's not really where you're at right now that matters.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point.
It's more your trajectory. It's
Yes.
more the trajectory of your life. So you say, well, I want to be an engineer. And you're starting school and everything. You're struggling with classes and engineering and everything. And you kind of wonder if you can really cut it, if you can really do it. But you don't look at that. But are you in a trajectory, at least headed in the right direction? Because incrementally, you'll get smarter. Incrementally, you'll get stronger. Incrementally, you'll start understanding concepts better, right?
Yeah.
So it's more the trajectory of someone's life than it is where they're currently at. Because too many people look at currently where they're at and get really, really discouraged.
Yeah.
And I want to challenge them. Think, what's God putting on your heart of what you want to become?
Yes.
And then start incrementally on that.
So true. I love that because, especially with where we're unpacking this at the beginning of the year, so many people are goal setting, gym memberships go through the roof the first of the year, and then they have, it's actually a thing now where it's like National Quit Day, which the second Friday of the year, people have already tapered off whatever they wanted to start. And probably because they go right out, pull too much, lift too much, get too sore, and that just discourages. So this concept of do a little, a lot, and do it often is so key. I heard somebody say, like, you want to start going to the gym, set your alarm clock, get up, get dressed. Okay, that's day one. Okay, day two, get up, get dressed, step into the gym, go home. And then maybe day three, then you're actually going to go pick up a weight. And so it's just kind of exactly what you're saying, where building these small shifts, these small changes that add up over time. And in the book, you reference, I think you give the example of what even it is financially, this concept of, the mathematics of compound interest.
That's right.
And it's so huge.
Yeah.
I think it's a great analogy.
And it's like they call it the miracle of compounding.
Yeah, that's
right?
true. Yeah.
Because, a little bit saved here and there. If at first everything you have in savings is just the principal.
Yeah.
And then you add a little bit more to the principal, and there's that much more that can compound, that can multiply.
That's
and so a little becomes a lot. So that's the way I look at it. Now, I guess the way I might taper what that quote or what that illustration you gave was, as far as going to the gym and everything, would be, don't go to the gym. Okay, don't even go to the gym.
Yeah. Just
get out of bed and do one push-up, and then go take a shower. And the next day, do 3 push-ups. And so start, if it's physical exercise you're going after, just do something.
Yeah.
And then maybe for you it's going to the gym, and maybe for somebody else it's just simply going into the living room and doing a few push-ups and sit-ups, but consistently doing it. That's my story. On the physical side,
right?
It was just me getting up in the morning and realizing, man, I'm making this way harder than it needs to be. Because we live in Colorado and it's cold in the morning a lot of times. Get in the car, drive to the gym. That means I've got to have all my stuff there, take a shower, then come to work and all that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's too much. I'll never sustain that. But I can sustain getting out of bed, getting on the floor right at the end of my bed, and pumping out 10 push-ups, and then 10 sit-ups, and then 10 air squats one time.
Yeah.
And then it's 2 sets, and then it's 3 sets. And so that's kind of how I see it. And so it is. It's like you said, and it's in the book, a little done a lot is better than a lot done a little.
It reminds me of a quote that I've often loved and reflected on myself to define kind of what we're talking here a little bit about is, these habits. And the quote is, action is the most important thing. And so action describes who a person is. Words describe who they want to be. And so we've heard,
That's really good.
You and I have heard, right?
I
a lot
like
of people
that.
just talk.
I love that.
Right? They just talk. And then you see, let's put it into action then.
Yeah.
And that's really what habits are.
Yeah.
So good.
And that's why it's important, I think, as a parent, to raise your kids in a home where there's some discipline, some boundaries
Yeah.
for them, because it's all about delayed gratification. And as young people, we just want it now. We want a lot now. We don't really want to put in the time for it. Every generation's been that way. It's not unique to this generation. That was true in my generation.
Yeah.
And that's why sports can be important and things like that, because you have to keep showing up. You're not just accountable to your parents. You're now accountable to a coach, and he doesn't give a rip.
Right.
If you don't want to show up, then you're off the team.
That's right.
That's great discipline. But that's developing little habits along the way that can have an impact later.
No, that's absolutely true. It's funny that, would you say that people that have had maybe an experience in competitive sports will have an edge up on digesting this versus never competing or having that?
I think that this is what I heard. I heard that almost all of your top executives and even some of the wealthiest people in the world were collegiate athletes.
Okay.
So it's a high percentage. I think it's like 75 or 80% of your most successful people were collegiate athletes. Now that's on a success continuum, right?
Sure.
Okay. But yes, if we go back and go, okay, they were this successful.
Yeah.
What made them successful? It was habits that they harnessed their purpose around. They harnessed their time, energy, and money around.
Yeah.
I wrote the book probably less for them.
Makes sense.
And maybe for people who've never learned that.
Yeah.
That's because those guys, a lot of those, they've got it. That's great. Now, this is a spiritual aspect too. It's not just mental and emotional, but it's spiritual.
Yeah.
And that's what we'll talk about when we get to habit 1, because that kind of sets the pace for the rest of the other 9 habits. But I'm looking for the person who feels defeated, who feels like they're not doing so good in this. I'm hoping that this will inspire them to want to go after it, because they already have habits.
Right. They do. Good, bad, or
everybody
otherwise.
in this room, you guys that are filming everything, we all have habits.
That's right.
But there's good habits, there's bad habits.
There it is.
There's quality habits, and there's kind of lame habits. But we're all living. So we have the habit, let's say every time we sit down or we're waiting in line somewhere, we pull out our phone and we look at the latest social network that you're on, gossip. Okay,
Sure.
So you're looking at that. Or you've got a book with you and you're reading a book. You're working your way through an historical novel or a biography or something like that. So everybody has habits, but quality habits make a quality life. Poor habits make a poor life.
Yeah, there was a great quote you have from the Green Bay coach. Yeah,
Lombardi.
Yeah, Lombardi is super good. And it's so true. It's about the type of habits and what they develop in us. And one way or the other, they're either developing good character or bad character.
Yeah.
It's kind of that reaping what you sow concept, which is, obviously biblical as well.
That's right.
So stepping into that, I had a question is, when you were laying this out and having read the book, you can see where they incrementally do build on each other. And we'll go through how that concept is actually lived out in the book and how we all build it. But just even restate what you said, reading this and having been a collegiate athlete, I mean, there's some muscle memory that you can touch on and that you can go back to. But even people who don't have that in their background, this is like putting the cookies, right on the low shelf. And I think that's so practical and applicable for anybody to pick up and start to develop better rhythms and better habits in their life. So,
well, I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope so, because first of all, I'm not like some sophisticated writer anyway, but I wrote it for men and women. It's interesting. I feel like that men get disciplined when they get their job. Like whenever they get that first job after college, if they went to college or after high school, if they're not going to go to college, but that job sort of harnesses their habits and stuff. I feel like with women, there is something that's of the spiritual nature within them that seems to get habits, good habits, quality habits earlier. It's interesting how much better women do in school in an academic setting than most men do.
Yeah.
It's different for all of us, but my hope is that it's inspirational enough for someone to say, man, I want a quality life. I want to understand what my purpose is. And then I'm going to harness my destiny through how I spend my time, even if it's just an incremental, small change. I'm going to bring some small changes into my life.
Yeah.
And I know they're going to reach a new place, a new level of quality just by doing a little bit a lot.
Yeah. For those that are tuning in real quick, what would you say, and the stat on how long does it take to form a habit?
Oh, man. So the smallest number I've seen is 21 days.
Yeah.
So when we wrote Worshiper Warrior up here, that was a 21-day devotional because of that. Then you read others, they say 30.
Okay.
And then with Whole Hard 45, which is our big thing that we're doing, we do every year at the Road Church at the beginning of the year, which involves the emotional, the mental, the physical, that whole thing for 45 days. Well, that 45 days wasn't random. I'd seen another study that said 45 days.
Yeah, which is almost double the 21, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So anywhere between 21 and 45 days seems to be kind of the marker. If you can do something for about three or 4 weeks, if you're seeing the benefit of it, you'll keep doing it. If you can do it for 21 to 45 days, you've probably developed a new habit.
So true.
And that's
good.
That's not that long, Ryan.
No.
Think about your whole life in front of you, all the stuff that we have to do with our job and with getting married and family and all that.
For sure.
What's 21 to 45 days to get something going like that? That's pretty amazing.
And to your point, like we all have the same amount of time. It's that first, maybe that initial discipline of sitting down and dissecting your time on a daily basis to find that. It's not that we're finding time. We're just maybe better utilizing where we do have space, if we're completely honest with ourselves. How much time do we waste?
That's right.
The weekly conviction of, last year or last week you had this many hours on screen time. You're like, yeah, okay, there's room. There's space in my life to carve and make space for this and bring it tangible. And that is nice. I mean, so when you set out to start a new habit and you start to experience the positive net results, that is very motivational and becomes very tangible for you to want to continue.
It has to become intrinsic at some point, not just extrinsic.
Right.
I give that illustration of learning Japanese.
Yeah.
So I was in Japan.
So good.
I'm a missionary in Japan. I'm working with college students. And I'm not naturally gifted at languages. So the only reason I passed Spanish in high school is because my gymnastics coach was my Spanish teacher, and he needed me to pass in order for me to compete. So he did some things that were interesting to make sure that I passed. So I go to Japan, and I know that I'm not going to be as good as everybody else probably. So in my mind, I thought, well, I like being with people. I enjoy conversation. I enjoy talking. It's a talking habit. It's a language, right? I'm not learning it on paper. I have to actually communicate it. So I came up with this little scheme of every day going to the college campus and finding Japanese students that wanted to talk to a foreigner, an American, in Japanese. And that was easy peasy because every Japanese student wants to meet an American and they especially want to meet an American who's interested in their culture. So I started doing that. So that was easy. Then the hardest thing about Japanese for Americans is the grammatical structure of the sentences. But you don't learn it by just memorizing it. You actually have to practice it. So then I made it a vow, kind of made a personal vow. I'm going to get in a habit of trying a new grammatical sentence structure each week. So here's what I'm doing. Dialogue 10 minutes a day, 5 days a week, and then one grammatical sentence structure challenge during the entire week. So then the next week it's a second one and a third one, like that.
Nice.
Now that's great. And it really worked well. And I became fluent in the language. What I learned, which I think's a key part of habits, and this is part that I don't see anybody writing about, but I think it's identity.
Yeah.
You got to have an identity shift before it's going to really become you. It has to become you. If it's just an extrinsic thing you're doing to lose weight or an extrinsic thing to I don't know, study something, whatever the habit might be that you're in. It's from the outside coming in, which is a good start, by the way.
Yeah.
Like I started with that. But then I learned that I had to feel the language. I had to even become almost like I had to become a Japanese in my heart. Mm-hmm. I had to understand the way they think and the way they feel in order to flow linguistically with the way in which they talk. And one of the most complex languages in the world is English. And English is really felt. It's actually grammatically, it's very, very complex and difficult. You don't even know, and I don't even know how complex what we say are, but you would if you had to learn it as a second language, right? So Japanese don't learn English very well most of the time because of that. And Americans don't learn Japanese, the language, very well either.
Right.
Because it's a feel. It's an identity. You got to start identifying with the language through the culture, through the people. So I feel like habits are that way.
That's really good.
That habits have to become you. You have to begin to say, that's what I do.
Yeah.
That's who I am. And as you do that, you won't lose it. I mean, it's harder to lose because that's who you are. I think that's what men and women who are alcoholics struggle with. That's what men and women who are coming off drugs, struggle with. Their identity is being an alcoholic. Their identity is being a drug addict.
Yeah.
And so they've got to break that and begin to see themselves differently. And that is not who I am.
That's huge.
Okay, I'm a child of God. I'm a spirit-filled believer. I'm a king. I'm a priest. I'm a son of God. I'm a daughter of God. And amazing things happen when you have this identity shift.
Yeah, I love that in the book, and it was going into saying things out loud. There's this audible declaration, this belief system, this narrative that's changed in us. And I think that's so powerful that because we see spoken word in God's biblical creation and design of our world, and it's a spoken word. And so there's power in the spoken tongue over our minds, over our identities. And so many times, so many of us live in a narrative that's been spoken over us. Whether we've created that right.
That's a really good point.
Over
a really good point.
Bad habits in our lives,
absolutely.
or just things that we've believed in a narrative that's been given to us.
That's right. Yeah, the speech center is at the very beginning of God saying, let there be light. So here we are, very, very beginning of Genesis. That's the first action. God begins to create, but the way he creates is interesting. He creates by speaking into existence what's not there. So it's not there. We get all caught up in the virgin birth of Jesus, but what about the virgin creation of the universe?
Right.
That's a little bit bigger than the virgin birth. So the virgin birth of the universe was spoken into existence. And so that's why I have those declarations in the book with each habit where you have to declare each day 10 times that particular habit that you're developing.
I love that, creating that habit, that discipline, and kind of rewiring the brain and the narrative that calls us into, I think, unity with God's kingdom as he's seeing us. We're now coming into alignment audibly with him. I got to think that he's got to just be smiling when he sees his creation respond like, yeah, that is how I've always seen you. That was your original intent and design over your life. And so thank you for stepping into that.
Yeah.
It's kind of how I picture him maybe responding in those moments.
Yeah.
So it's super good. Kind of back to Japan and thinking through as we talk about fear and then embracing the courage with these concepts. You're new on the landscape. You're already wrestling with maybe your limitations with foreign language, but there's a desire. Was there some fear that stepping onto a campus and engaging initially, before there was this positive feedback, you had to face some fears?
Oh, yeah.
I'm going into a foreign land, into a foreign country with foreign gods, and I'm bringing my God, the truth of the Christian walk, the gospel of the kingdom, and you're trying to learn how to communicate that to these precious people.
Huge.
I can
huge
imagine.
Fears.
Wow.
Because I just had such fear of failure. And I felt like I'm going to look like an idiot out here trying to stammer through this language and then to try to talk to students who come out of a more Shinto, Buddhist background to start thinking about Christ.
Right.
Pretty hard.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it was pretty hard.
Wow.
But, you don't raise support, become a missionary by wimping out over every little fear you have.
True.
So I kind of overcame it quick, and then I began to enjoy it.
Yeah. That's clear. That's awesome. I want to jump back to this quote you have in here from James Clear. Super good. Author of Atomic Habits, New York Times bestseller. The quality of our lives often depends on the quality of our habits. With the same habits, you'll end up with the same results, but with better habits, anything is possible. So let me tie that quote that you have, and then maybe talk a little bit as you were crystallizing or distilling the habits you wanted to focus on. Was there a specific rhyme or rhythm, or how did you land on these 9 habits?
It was a labor of gradually understanding what seemed to be the elements that God's put in each one of us to build new habits in certain areas. So I didn't come with any kind of preconceived notions at all. Matter of fact, I wasn't even thinking of writing a book. I wasn't even thinking about 9 habits. I was just more looking at fear and trying to see, how do we overcome? How do we overcome fear? I remember overcome was a big word to me at the beginning, like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I was thinking overcome. And then I realized, well, this is really about courage. This is more about courage. Liz is the one, my wife is the one who came up with breakthrough courage.
Yeah.
Because she knew, like for weeks, at least, maybe even a month, I'm like, I need a title for this. And that's she's the one who came up with breakthrough courage. One morning when she woke up, she said, I got it. Breakthrough courage. And I was like, yeah, that's it. But I wasn't thinking about habits at first. And then I began to see habits really do define us. Habits define us.
Amen.
They do.
Yeah.
I don't care what you say. I don't care what I say. Look at my habits. That's who I am. Some guy says, well, I don't drink very much. I'm not an alcoholic. But well, then stop. Just stop drinking. If that's causing all these problems in your life, just stop drinking.
Yeah.
And then they can't, but they say they can.
Yeah. As a dad, for me, kind of assessing how am I doing was the measuring stick on fatherhood with Ryan and his kiddos. And I'm thinking, well, what habits do they see me living out consistently? Which caused me pause to reflect and say, well, where, in my story in family of origin, where did I see good habits modeled in my life? And, I went to my grandfather. I saw my dad model really good habits with people and relationships. I saw my grandfather model really good habits with just physical fitness and being able to do a lot of things well into his late 80s or early 80s, late 70s, where he was ahead of his demographic in mobility and strength and all that. I'm like, well, that was really inspiring. So it just caused me to think, okay, what habits am I modeling that hopefully my kids are catching?
Yeah.
And so for you, as you thought through this, people that inspired you in the areas of discipline and habits, what would you say?
Well, very similar to you, Ryan, my dad.
Yeah.
I can still remember we were in Huntsville, Alabama. He was planting a new church. And I was in his room, and he's doing sit-ups and push-ups. It's funny, I can just remember that like it was yesterday.
That's awesome.
That was a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
And then Dad takes, he's 93 years old right now, and he walks almost a mile a day.
Wow.
So he just always has been and then time with the Lord, I'd see him with his Bible open there. So I think I grew up in a very disciplined home. That helped a lot. And then I had good coaches. I hear kids talk about bad coaches. I remember one bad coach in baseball, Little League, football, baseball, basketball, gymnastics, wrestling, these sports. I had great coaches. All of them were good models to me.
That's huge. I think when I look at it and I think about what I'm modeling, I didn't discover the habits that I wanted from all of them. It came from like 3 or 4 different people that I saw, right? So
Yep.
My grandmother was the one who was really faithful in the scriptures, and I saw her studying God's word all the time and taking copious notes. It's really good, and I love that. Again, I just can't state enough. Just that it takes. We just need to find courage for us to make the changes that we desire, because we want different results, and it's accessible to everybody. We all have the ability to do this if we'll just embrace. Partner with God and His kingdom to start making these incremental shifts in our lives to see real results
That's
and real
right.
change.
Absolutely.
Super huge.
Absolutely.
I guess, what would you say your hope for the audience as they pick this up? Where would you want to encourage them as they're even just getting started, as it's daunting? We start to think about habits. And again, I'm thinking to the gym, the driving, the daunting task, the cold weather of Colorado. But then how do we overcome maybe some of those initial hurdles? Because every habit, one could say that there's a couple hurdles before that's developed into a habit.
First of all, everybody has fear. Everybody has fear of something. It's a fear of never getting married. It's a fear of staying married. No, but it can be that for some people, But everybody's got fears about their ability to be successful. I think there's a lot of fear of failure. There's a lot of fear of the shame in our life. So my hope is that through these 9 habits, men and women can replace the fear with faith and courage. So like with Joshua going into the promised land, in Joshua chapter 1, he is full of fear. And yet God says to him 4 times, be strong and courageous.
Yeah.
And everybody's got a Jordan River. I mean, everybody's got a river of doubt. Everybody's got a river of fear that God's calling them to cross over, to go for it, to break into their promised land. So I believe that that's what God wants for every one of us, is to cross that Jordan River of doubt, that Jordan River of shame, the Jordan River of fear, through developing a new way of living, through harnessing your time through habits.
Absolutely. I love that. We're going to talk about bloodstained allies in the days ahead and those things, but I'm thinking as Joshua, in your illustration, is getting initiated into the task ahead, he's first initiated by Moses, kind of his coach, and he's watched Moses model it now for 40 years with these people in the desert, and he's speaking it into him. He's like, you're going to need to be strong. You're going to be courageous. And then we see later in the book of Joshua where God does come back and stands on that encouragement from Moses, stamping it further into the heart of Joshua. So for me, that was just a reminder of, when we hear thoughts, when we hear things and phrases in our mind, especially when we're trying to make change and change the results, change the habits in our lives, that we start to maybe not replay the negative narratives, but we start to focus on and think about the people that have spoken life and positive things into our lives, and really start to, hang there, build the foundation, start the foundation on that. There's people that have believed in me along the way, even when I didn't believe in myself.
Good.
And I just think that's huge as we start this process of journeying down these 9 habits.
That's great. I'm excited to do it. I'm excited to do it with you. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be great.